Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. Well, the Domino XL DF-700, or Domizilla as I like to call it, has brought some really longer tenons to the game. These are certainly much longer tenons than you can get with the 500 out of the box, as you can see from this panel of the various sizes. But the thing is, they're still not really all that wide. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that sometimes you actually would like a wider tenon. And it would be nice, especially if you're doing something like a leg to apron joint, or if you're building doors or gates, anything like that, large outdoor structure, something like that. Sure, you can lay out an array of these tenons, but you might actually be better served, and it might be faster for you in certain situations to just use a larger tenon right from the get-go. Now, with the Domizilla's pin-style fence that we have on the front here, it turns out it's exceptionally easy to make wider mortises. And the nice thing about it is that, unlike the procedure I showed for the 500 where you have to use the cursor here, it's a little slower, you might get some variances. This one here, they're always going to be pretty much identical. Now, this is a board that I made of some extra wide mortises. This is done using a 12mm bit, the one that comes with the Domizilla. This one here being an exact size mortise using just a mortiser setting. And then these three here being made using different variations and combinations of the pins on the front. Now, their widths are easily calculated from the bits, just like the regular one is 13.5mm plus the diameter of the bit. Well, these other ones here are very easy to compute as well. And I'm going to have a table of those listed on my website if you wanted to print that out and keep it around for making additional stock. Now, it turns out that by using this technique, we can come up with some pretty big tenons. This one here being one of the largest tenons that you can have using a 10mm bit, not the 12, but the 10. And this is almost 5.5 inches long because it's 140mm long. But a tenon like this, if you were making an outdoor gate, something like that, you've got so much stock and material there. Plus, you'd actually be able to drawbore this. It'd be very easy to pin this with different type of a drawbore technique on both sides in order to really cinch that up and give it some mechanical strength besides any of the glue strength that you're looking for. So this is one of my little test blocks where I did a number of different mortises. And if we take a look here at the 10, this is the widest mortise. You can see that we got just a really nice snug fit, and it's about perfect. And I'll show you how to make these tenons. Now let me remove the fence so I can show you the pins a little bit easier. Gotta save my strength for hockey. So the pins on the front can be used for registering, of course. Now, if you've got a Domino 500 with the paddles, more than likely you've retracted those and set the set screw and you never use those. But these pin ones, what are nice about these is that they register inside holes as well. So the idea being that you can use, say, the outside pin. After you've mortised a hole, you can hook this inside of a mortise and then make the next one. So you can stagger across. It makes it really easy if you make an array of mortises. But a different way of doing it is that instead of hooking this on the previous mortise, is to hook this inside the existing mortise. So that the next hole is so close that you're actually extending it. And now, given that we have 3 pins on each side, we can alternate the way that we do the mortises to make progressively larger holes. Now, the 3 extra size mortises that I showed here are basically the only practical ones. Beyond that, you might as well just pencil line it and just march across on your own. But these ones here are very fast to make using the pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the camera in closer. I have a special piece of stock that we're going to do the mortises in, so I'll just do a few of them for the different widths, and then afterwards we'll go and describe the details. It'll be a little easier that way, and then we'll talk about how to make your own tenon stock. So let's get at it. So on the sample board, I'm going to be mortising an exact size mortise here. The first larger size, larger, and then the largest one that we can do. I currently have a 10mm bit in the Domino. The way I've picked this very special stock is that the bit is going to be exposed on the top surface here. So you're going to be able to see where the mortise goes, and then we're going to see where the alignment of the pins go. So we'll do just this first one here, which is the exact size one, just it's going to be a good reference. So there's an exact size mortise for a 10mm bit. Now, it's not the full width here because the curve is coming up, but this would be for our 10mm Domino. Now let's scoot over and do this one here as an oversized one. Note the pin. There's our first oversized one. Note that the pin was hooked on this side. Now we're going to go to the second one. It's the middle pin on this side. There we go. Wider mortise. Now we're going to go and do the widest one. So I'll open all these up. So now we have the inside pin, the middle pin, and then the outside pin. And that's how we're going to march through them as well. And this last one would be the correct size for this large tenon that I made. Now I was only plunging 15 deep, so that was the minimum depth. Now normally the pins are used for marching across a board to make successive mortises. So what you would do is, if this was your first mortise that you just finished planting, you might use this pin here to hook it inside the mortise hole onto the inside edge, and then you'd plow a second mortise here, and then you'd put one here. You'd march your way across the board, and of course you can choose from one of the three spacings depending on the direction that you're going. What I'm using them for is, instead of putting them on the previous mortise, I'm putting them on the inside edge of an existing mortise. So this one here, after I just plowed it, if I want the very first mortise that's extra wide, I hook the inside pin into that hole and I mortise again, and that would widen it to this side here to create this wide mortise. Now once I have this mortise, I could use this pin, the middle pin on the opposite side, hook it on the opposite side, and then it widens out the mortise to create this one. Then once you have this one, you can then use the outside pin, hook it onto that edge, run the mortise, and now you've got this larger size mortise. So while it can look a little complicated when you go to do it, it's really ridiculously fast and easy. So you can see the pattern. If you want the first one that's wider, you use just the inside pin that's on the left side of your fence. If you want to also be able to do this one, then you have to add the middle pin on the right. If you want to then be able to do this one as well, you add the outermost pin on the left. So again, inside left, middle right, outside left. Very easy to do. And then you always end up laying them out. Now your center lines get completely messed up. So if you're marking a center line for this, of course the exact size one is perfect. But when you do these ones and you mark a center line, you're off center from where that tenon is going to be. Now if it matters to you that you really want that pencil line to be dead in the middle, all you have to do is offset it by using the cursor hairs that are on this fence. By lining up the center line off center of this by either 2, 4, or 6 millimeters, depending on which size you're shooting for, you can make it that your mortise is then centered on the line that you wrote. The only problem is that this cursor only starts at 10 millimeters. It doesn't go down that close. So what you would have to do, and this is an option for somebody that would be doing a lot of these and doesn't want the hassle, is you could remove this cursor, double stick tape it to a metric rule, and then you could just mark those lines on the cursor. I mean, I would use an X-Acto knife to just make the line. The little scratch mark will show just perfectly well. And then you could use that for offsetting the mortises. So when you're doing this one here, you could offset over by 6 millimeters. When you first do your plunge, this whole thing would be scooted over by 6 millimeters. It's only the first one that you need to use the cursor hair for. The rest of them are all mechanical using the pins. This one here being 2 and this one here being 4. So now while this whole thing might sound a little complicated, it's super easy to do and very fast to do. Doing these mortises, you can crawl through them very quickly. Now I know on my previous video for the DF-500 on doing the oversized mortises, someone asked, well, if you're doing the oversized mortises, why not just use a router? Well, basically that's what this is, and it's doing the oscillation, but this is still, even if you do, in the case of this widest one, 4 plunges. They're all very quick, especially when you have the pins out. They all just sit there and they lock side to side as you go through the motion, and you can do 4 quick plunges and have this mortise done, as opposed to putting a set of guides up here to balance a router on the edge, and then having to set the plunge depth each time as you make a successive pass with stops on the end. I mean, that's also a very valid solution if you need something even beyond this. But for a standard size like this that we can create, this is a whole lot faster. So over here at the bandsaw, we're going to make some of this Tenon stock. Now, of course, you're not going to be making onesie-twosies. Normally, I take some extra stock that I might have resawn and it's close to the right size, maybe drum sand it to get it down to that final perfect thickness. But then if you have a pile of this stuff, it's really easy to rip off a bunch of it and round the edges so that you have some perfect Tenon stock, and that's what we're going to do now. So I set the bandsaw up so it's basically looks like it's going to be the correct thickness. I sure hope so. Now here's some demo stock that I have that I'm going to just rip into a couple different tenons, and it's actually sort of interesting stock, because what this is I grabbed some wood over at the local wood shop. It had like monster twist in this 6/4 poplar. Well, it's Arizona 6/4, which means it's just a hair above 1.25 inches in thickness. We pay a lot for wood that we don't get. But it's got a monster twist in it. So this one board, I cut off a chunk of it about yay long for doing these demos, and I ran it through the joiner and then the planer. So one side of it was nice and flat, and I ripped that side off, and the other side had a flat section in the middle, and then the two ends did these like nasty twists. And these are the ends actually, but these are too small to run through a planer. So even after I took off those ends, I couldn't really run them through. So what I did is I put the flat side up here and I resawed it flat. So these are the edges that came off of it, but certainly a very nice way to just I looked at this board, had no idea how I was going to get that flat in any reasonable amount of time. So just popped it on the bandsaw, and actually it's hard to tell if that's the bandsaw surface or if that's the plane surface, but only a little bit of scraping or something and you'd be done. Alright, enough about the bandsaw. So let's go ahead and rip this stock. That's going to work for me there. So of course I could go through and run through a long board, a bunch of different boards, whatever, and come up with a lot of tenon stock. But we still need to round the edges, so let's go to the router table. So this widest tenon stock is 67 millimeters wide, so I'm just going to rip it to 67 millimeters even when it's square, because then we're going to round it over, and the round over is not going to be taking in any dimension. So what I've got in the table is just a 1/4 inch round over bit. Now, technically, if this is a 10 millimeter, it's going to need to be a 5 millimeter radius to be dead accurate to the edge, but you kind of don't want that. What's going to happen with this bit is if you set it a little bit higher so that you can get the rounding to actually fit inside the mortise as a test fit, you're going to find that you have a little tiny gap on this edge, and you kind of want that for the glue relief, because you don't have any grooves on the top like you do on a regular domino for the glue to be able to come out and creep. So, having a bit of a rough surface is good. It'll grab the glue and hold it, and also having a little bit of glue relief on the edges is good. So this bit, all I did is I took a stock, one of the longer 10 millimeter dominoes, put it up on here, and then just waited until that curve just fit as best as it could on the edge. And then you just need to do a little test fit. Once you got it there, it takes no time at all. Then just run through a batch of the stock, like we're going to do right now. If you look more carefully, you can see there's a little bit of a gap on the edges, just a hair. That's going to be enough for the glue. So that was a little bit of a fast tour of how we can make these oversized mortises repeatably using the pins that are on the front of the Domino XL, the Domizilla. And then also we talked about how easy it is to make the tenon stock. I mean, sure, you got to dial in your bandsaw, but that doesn't take very long when you already have some sample stock, which you can use the stock dominoes for, which is how I did this one. And then you could run through just a big pile of them, round them all, cut them to the right widths, and away you go. Tenons this long and things like gates or anything big structures, you're going to be able to drawbore these, pin these. You got tons of surface area to be working with. So this is definitely almost a better solution than an array of dominoes, which is a little bit harder to pin. So that finishes the overview of how to make these, and if you look at my website, I'll tell you what the offsets are and the widths are and all that. Of course, you can completely experiment on your own, and I kind of suggest that you would, because you'll see how easy it is to make these. But what I'm going to do for the rest of this video, if it doesn't interest you, then of course, go on to go see something more interesting. What I'm going to do now, actually, for the rest of the video is I'm going to actually take the cursor hair off of my fence, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the alignment marks for 2 millimeters, 4, and then 6 millimeters off of center. So I'll be adding those lines to this. It's some close-up so you can see, but if you're not interested in marking up your cursor hair, well, that's fine. You're kind of done here. But otherwise, I'll take you in a little closer. We'll see how that goes, and then using that, we could then make sure that these mortises are centered on the crosshairs. It's very easy to do. So let's go do that. Now to do this modification, I'm just going to take a T10 to remove the cursor. And then what we're going to do is we're basically going to stick it on a metric rule centered on the cursor hair. Now I previously said that we cared about 2, 4, and 6. It turns out we care about 3, 4, and 6. So I misspoke there. So only the people that stuck it out to see this are going to know that. So now if you don't like modifying Festools because you want to keep it pristine, well, you can order this as a replacement part. So if you botch it up too, you can order it as a replacement part, and I'll have the part number on Monday. So this is the cursor hair right side up. I want to actually put the marks on the bottom side so that they're a little bit closer to where I really care to see them. Now I'm just going to double stick tape this metric rule to the top face of the guide so that I can score the underside. Just going to center it on one of the marks here. Perfect, right there. Got it centered right on 80. Now one of the benefits of having a ruler that's a little bit bigger than the guide is that now I can take a square here and I can find the line that I want before scoring it. So get a new blade. So now I've got this sitting right on the 3. If I were to score along the side there, I'll be right on the 3. I'm not going to do that up here. I'm going to do it down here where I can see what I'm doing. There you go, the first mark. You can barely see the mark here that I just added on. For me, it's very clear. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them, pop this off, and show you what it looks like. So again, I'm going to be doing them at 3, 4, and 6. All right, I officially can't return my XL now. It's a little tricky for you to see on the camera, but there they are. I added some extra long lines for the 5, so since I was doing a 3, 4, and a 6, I went ahead and did the 5 as well, so that I wouldn't be wondering why there's an extra gap. But really easy to do. Just take your time on doing the scratch. And if you botch this, you can get another replacement part. So now you got to put this back on your domino and recalibrate it. Recalibrate the center line. I have a video that shows you how to do that. It shows it with the DF-500, but it's the exact same procedure. So go ahead and pop this back on your fence. Do a couple test mortises until you get this thing dead on again. And then after that, you're going to be able to use these lines to offset the mortises. The first size larger mortise has an offset of 6. So what you would do is you would use the 6 that you just finished scribing in here. That's what you'd line up on your cursor hair for your first plunge. Then after that, it's just mechanical, using the pins. And then this mortise would be centered on this line. This one here uses a 3. So you'd put it first on the 3 and then do it mechanically. This one here uses 4. So you put it on the 4 and do it mechanically. They'll all center just fine. And this is going to be on a table that you can print up to make sure that you remember. Because it's not, it would be nice if it was 2, 4, 6, but it's not. All right, thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. Well, the Domino XL DF-700, let me just itch my ear while I'm talking to you.